like to call the Henry County Council meeting of June 27th, 2024 to order. If you'd please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a short prayer, please. Council, you should have received the minutes from Debbie from our May 8th meeting. If there are no corrections, take a motion to approve.
So moved.
Moved by Susan,
I'll second.
second by Mike. Any discussion or changes? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 6-0. Probation is up. Susan Lightfoot. We have a position description for a licensed clinician that you have a handout about. It is from grant money. You're on, Susan, if the light is green at the base.
I turned it on. Thank you. As hopefully you all know, Indiana, as well as some other states, are in a behavioral health crisis right now. Usually pretty loud. Scott says I'm loud. Okay. As you all know, we're in the middle of a behavioral health crisis, not only with juveniles, but with adults as well. And as a result, I'm concerned about both. But the Youth Justice Improvement Committee has issued some grants, or did issue some grants, actually last fall. And we didn't know whether we'd get it or not, but you don't get a grant unless you try. So we wrote for a 2-year reimbursable grant to hire a licensed clinician to work with the juvenile probation kids in our office. My goal someday would be able to hire another person to work with our adult clients as well. Unfortunately, we're seeing more and more individuals with substance use disorder and mental illness ending up in our jail and in secure detention. That's not where they need to be. It doesn't help them, and it doesn't do anybody any good. So that's why we wrote the grant. The total 2-year grant is for a total of $311,718.14. That breaks down to $155,859.07 each year. The grant was supposed to start January 1. It did not because of, I think it's a brand new grant. They weren't sure what they were doing. It's administered by Criminal Justice Institute. We were told in late December that we'd receive the grant. I think the executed grant has only been out maybe 3-4 weeks, Deb, is that right? So we now know we have received the grant, and I would like approval for the job description that I worked with Wagner, Irwin, and Shealy on to develop, and permission to hire this position based on the grant funding.
Okay, this is a posting that we have. You said you have a Wagner Irwin Shealy job description also then.
Did.
Oh, this is the job description that's before us, and it's
No,
100.
it's not been posted yet. I didn't want to jump the gun.
Is exempt position. It's the grant's for 155. How much of it is salary?
55.
55? Okay. Any questions for Susan? If not, I'd entertain a motion.
I do have one question. Do you have other licensed clinicians, and is that salary in line with what they're paid?
We worked with 2 licensed clinicians out of Indianapolis that I've known for years to help us come up with that salary. We also worked with Dr. Casey Peterson from IU School of Medicine, who helped us with that position and with the job description.
Okay, I'm just curious. There's nobody else doing this job that's paid by the county making,
Not to my knowledge. If so, please point them out.
Just making sure, didn't want to pass
Yep.
a job description that was different than, different salary for similar work.
No, sir.
Thank you.
And that's the reason it's probably listed as SO, special occupations. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the position.
I'll second.
Moved by Betsy, seconded by Shannon. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0.
Thank you very much.
We have the Highway Department. We have both, Joe's going to talk about cumulative bridge. I'm not sure that council have this, probably not. If you do not have this, blame your president, because I think it was sent to me and I did not forward it on. Is it possible, Debbie, that this could be? Yes, thank you. And it's more readable than mine because I did it on 8.5. I have to have almost a microscope to see mine. Now I can actually use my glasses. It looks like it's 11 by 17. This is readable. Thanks. Mine really was not. Thank you for making that copy. So council, you do have it, and Joe's going to talk about, looks like a 5-year bridge project or analysis, and Braden's going to talk about something he's proposing for vacation, which may have to go to the personnel manual and wait until Wagner or when Shealy, but he's going to introduce it. Go ahead, Joe.
I'm here to talk about a plan. I put together the latest plan earlier this year in March for the bridges through 2029. We're seeking, of course, federal funding, community crossing matching grant funding, and this lays out which bridges go when, okay, and what year. Of course, that's updated, maybe twice a year. If we don't get federal funds, and we do, and we apply for other bridges. Some of these are already active. I can go through some of them. 242 is, currently we've got 2 proposals, waiting on a third for the commissioners to look at and pick someone to design it. I'd like to do community crossing matching grant next year for that. Bridge 126 just bid, Garner Street. It was awarded. It's the one there over Big Blue. It shows a lot better condition in the inspection than what it actually is. It's, the deck's in really bad shape. The rebar, top mat of rebar, which is about 2 inches down in the deck, has rusted so bad that it separated the concrete. So now instead of an 8-inch deck, I have a 6-inch and 2-inch. All right, so that'll be taken care of. He has until May 1st of next year to complete. And we've limited the amount of time that he can close it. 162, we just got federal funds to replace the deck. That's down east of Knightstown. 138 is currently federal aid. The culvert Bedley 37, we just, yesterday, the commissioners approved the bridge package to use on that particular structure. That'll be in by the end of the year. And then the others are on down the road. I do have one up in Middletown, or at the south end of Middletown, that bridge. I've got a contractor who's working in another county right now. When he finishes a job over there, I want him to come over and start work on that bridge. It needs a deck repair and overlay. And instead of closing the road, we're going to 1 lane and use signals to get people through there. So we'll still get people moving. We do have miscellaneous large culvert in there for 200,000. I want to first let's jump to the culvert. It's wait a minute, I got it. Okay. The county had a inspection of culverts. I believe it was those over 48-inch done in 2013 and 2014. And this is the master list of all the culverts that they said needed replaced or repaired. Some of these structures are rather large. An example is Dudley 37. It's between 19 and 20-foot span. It's just inches from being a bridge. The bridge is 20-foot span. And it's going to cost us, I think, in the neighborhood of $300,000 to put that structure in there. And that's cheap. You can see we've gotten some done. Some were done when I was here before. But it's all boils down to money. The ones with the check marks are the ones that are completed. All right, and you can see the year needed date on there. It's pretty bad. Some of these structures will be large structures, 14, 12 foot, maybe a concrete box. Some of them may have to go to a bridge, but we have a lot of large culverts to replace. Braden's done, 70 culverts so far this year, various sizes. So it's not like we're sitting around, or he's sitting around looking at them. We're almost due for another inspection. 11, 12 years, we need to be looking at these things again. And that's, and bottom line, it takes money.
Joe, are these cost estimates on this, current cost estimates, or are those from when
The original 13 and 14. So that's going to be higher than what it shows there.
Thank you.
And these are estimates by the engineering firm that put that together.
So would they be 1.5 times that amount, given what you know, or twice that amount, or? I know
Could be as much
construction
as twice. I mean,
close to,
it depends, a lot of it depends on what type of structure it has to be replaced with. If it's a pipe, it's not going to be quite as bad. If it's a concrete box, it could get expensive. And if it's a bridge, it'll get real expensive. I mean, we're talking 300, 350,000.
so cumulative bridge can be used for bridges and culverts.
Yes. The bridges, the last handout is a priority schedule for bridges, and that was done with the inspection on what they call phase 1. You can see that the check marks are the ones we have replaced. Of course, we're working on 242, 138. 178, I believe, is the one that's a nightmare. I've got one just outside Spiceland on Spiceland Pike, and it's a failed aluminum box. Not good. It needs replaced. It's been undermined. It's a mess. And that's the next one we're probably going to look at for next year. And it's not going to be cheap. But this is the list. I'm trying to do not only replacements, but I'm trying to do some maintenance so we don't get to the point where we have to replace the entire structure. So maintenance would be deck repairs and overlays, solid overlays. 2 inches thick, special concrete they put on these bridge decks to hold up. So if we can do that, we probably save the bridge many, many, many years. I expect those to last at least 25 years. Of course, NDOT won't agree with that, but we don't use the calcium chloride like they do either.
Joe, out of curiosity, with the current administration passing various infrastructure bills, federal administration, is there any chance of federal funding on any of these projects?
Yeah, we've got federal funding. If you look over to the right, on some of these on the column. It has FA, and that's federal aid. Bridge 138 has federal aid. Bridge 162 has federal aid. And I usually do federal aid when they're larger structures, okay? If they're smaller structures, say 50 feet or less, we can do them local, and I believe save a lot of money. I don't want an interstate bridge in, you know, when we got 25 vehicles a day, traffic, so.
That's great. Thank you.
And your bridge, the yellow highlighting is federal. Is that true? Or at least
Yeah, the
partially?
yellow is the match that we have to put up, our 20% match for construction. Okay,
And are those amounts reflected on your spreadsheet, the 20%?
yeah, 20%,
Okay.
yeah, not cheap,
Nothing is,
not cheap, yeah. So we have to save up right now for that. Then I noticed Steve had mentioned something about, I was getting some funding from another source. Well, the other source is MVH restricted. There's a line item in there called bridge, and I'm taking $500,000 out of there every year to try to help boost some of these projects, bridges and large culverts.
what's that due to like repaving and chip seal?
We're still at what, 3 million, right? We're still at 3 million for our road work.
Not gone into that very deeply then at all.
Yeah, I think we're okay. It'd be nice to have that going to the roads, but, and then we got that, chip seal through a contractor with Community Crossings, so they'll pay 75% of that. And that bid was a little over 2 million.
Was that higher or lower than you anticipated?
It's about where I had expected it to be. We added a few roads on the bid. Okay, 3 of them. So, yeah, it's in the neighborhood.
That's that Illinois firm.
Yes, Illinois.
When do they start?
I'm still waiting to hear from them as far as scheduling goes.
Everything on
I'm
that?
hearing late July or early August, if possible.
Okay.
They'll get it done quickly. Hang
Okay,
on.
so even though they start in August, the $2 million worth of their contract, they'll finish by the end of this season.
Yeah, I put a completion date of September 1st. Yeah, and the difference between the chip seals you've seen in the past and the ones you'll see now this year, these will look just like the states.
So it's like a sealant on the top that doesn't
Yeah.
have
There'll be-
dust.
There'll be what they call a fog seal placed on top of the chip seal. And it'll be black when they're done.
I have a feeling you'll have fewer complaints from the citizenry.
Yeah, the only problem is when they shoot that, or they gotta wait a little bit, and then they lightly broom it to get the loose material off, and then they'll come in and shoot that fog seal. Fog seal's set up pretty quick, so they'll be on it in no time. So, yeah, I think there'll be no more chips flying around or stone flying around and then cut the dust, and yeah, it'll be a lot nicer. So bottom line is,
You need money.
money.
Well, we've had the discussion. Is Jason here? Or Jason step out?
He stepped out the back.
Okay, the question is, and I had this for Debbie a couple of years ago, this cumulative fund. We mess with it, we raise it, which I've been kind of hinting we need to do for the last 5 years. It affects the general fund.
General fund. yeah.
So that's where if Jason comes back, I'd like to have that. How does it affect it, in what proportion, and what, Rob Peter to give Paul, we need to see that analysis from him.
Okay.
Because I know you've been underfunded. If I remember right, you have 140 some odd bridges in the county? I
Yeah,
think I saw-
144.
Yeah, 144. And it looks like the cost of repairing these that you have on your spreadsheet, it's gonna add up to a lot of money.
Yeah, this spreadsheet is workable, okay? Now, if I was going for what we should be doing, that would be a lot higher. Heat
Joe,
pump.
can I ask some questions about your spreadsheet?
Yeah,
Things in green are community crossing funding.
yes.
And I see that disappears in 2027, but you also have federal aid thrown in there in bigger numbers in 2028 and 29. Is there, are you anticipating because of federal aid, we're not going to be eligible for community crossing or?
No, no, those will be added later. Those zeros will go away. We will have something for, I will apply for community crossing.
From a strictly budgeting standpoint, we know we need to save for those matching out in 28 and 29.
Right.
In between now and then, it's like asking a dumb question. Do you need more money, right? Of course you do. But is there anything happening between now and then? From my standpoint, I think we need to start setting that money aside so it's there when it gets here. And we need to know that, but I don't want it to get spent on something else either. So, if we start setting that money aside to reach that 295 and that 520 that you have out in 2028 and 29, do you have budget or plans for budget that would not have to tap into those resources?
Yeah, if you follow this, we should be in good shape, all right?
Okay.
We gotta follow it. We can't add a lot to it, okay? And
Right.
if we do, we gotta come up with the money somewhere else.
Thank you.
And since Jason walked back in, Jason, we're going to be asking you how, if we were to incrementally increase a certain amount to the Cume Bridge, we've got like the lowest Cume Bridge, except for one county in East Central Indiana, and it's not keeping up with the needs as projected by people who analyze and rate our bridges. What that effect is to the general fund or any other fund, we need to talk to you. We've mentioned doing something with the Cume Bridge for the last 5 years I have. We need to talk to you about what effect that has on other funds. So a placeholder in your mind of coming attractions. What? Yeah, if you can give us a Reader's Digest, the effect.
Yeah, the Cume Bridge is kind of within the maximum levy, so it's kind of like your other funds. You could move levy from the general fund to the Cume Bridge. It's kind of 1-to-1. And then there's the Cume Bridge, there's a maximum rate that you can go up to. I think it's 5 cents. You can't go above that. But you could move levy from your general fund to the Cume Bridge. You just have to adjust the budget in your general fund as well.
Okay, well, that needs to be part of the conversation because it kind of goes along with, we either do that or we have to plan ahead for 28, 29. And it may be 6 one, half dozen other, but it needs to be part of the discussion. Okay, that's good to know. I did not know that. Thanks. Questions? You have anything else?
A lot of this federal aid, the blue, is 80% reimbursable. The federal aid, you have to pay up front, and then you get reimbursed 80% back. But the only exception to that is construction. Construction, you have to pay your 20% to the state before they will give notice to proceed to the contractor. Now, community crossings is different. They give us the 75% after the bid, and then we have that money to put toward the project. Different, so. And we will, the reason that the projects are out so far on federal aid 28 and 29 takes that long to develop with the environmental and all the things they have to do. So, I plan on keep asking for federal aid and community crossings as much as possible. And of course, you probably know that community crossings went from 1 million this year to 1.5 million. So we were able to pay a portion of our chip seal for roads and a portion of Bridge 126 with that money.
In essence, it's kind of almost keeping up with inflation in the last 4 years, almost.
I think it's more of a donut counties need money and so they raise.
We're one county out of the donut.
Yeah,
We're kind of in the ring of Saturn.
they.
Questions for Joe? Because I know Braden has some things I introduced also. Any other questions? we heard you say you had a 5-year bridge replacement and culvert replacement plan at one of the commissioners' meetings, so we- since we have to kind of come up with the funding, we're glad to see this. So we
Okay,
can
yeah.
study it and we'll work on the
it-
cumulative bridge.
As it changes, I will bring new copies up.
Well,
Can you share the spreadsheet so we can look at the equations? Sure, send it to us.
Yeah, yeah, I don't have your email, but I'll send it to Kenan if he can distribute, yeah.
I can pass it on. Maybe I'll be quicker than I was this week with GIS map.
Oh,
It was only a 5-day delay. They did get it.
okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Just something to chew on. And Braden talked to me on the phone within the past week about a proposal that I think is going to have to go with the commission. I think it's going to be a personnel manual change or maybe something we put on hold till we get the Wagner or Winchell, but I wanted him to introduce it because it made sense. That I don't think it's something we can decide today. So go ahead with what you were sharing with me on the phone you wanted to share.
Yeah, I'm sure there's gonna be several questions about it, but, what I would like to be able to do is to offer each individual that works at the county highway department, if they don't use all their vacation, when their time's getting ready to roll up, to be able to take a week's, pay for that remaining, vacation time that they have.
And of course,
It
we've
would
got,
on- it
we've
would
got to
only
look
be-
at the effect on all departments and we've got to look at what the cost is and if you have, the net cost.
Yeah, so if every single person, the highway opted to do that, would be roughly $22,300.
How many employees is that?
Right now we have 26.
I agree with Ken, and that's a personnel manual thing, but it'll definitely impact the budget because there's a lot more than 26 employees in the county.
So that's why I wanted to
I-
bring it up.
I
mean,
appreciate
I
the.
don't think we
the
can do a
sentiment.
carve out just for one department. And this, yeah, this is a discussion because I think the commissioners approved back in February, approval to go ahead with that personnel manual, whatever that description of that committee is. And I know we've held off making any motion on that because we're waiting on Wagner and Shealy, which will have a huge impact on implications for the personnel manual and the job classification committee, whatever that's going to be called in the future. So, yes. Yes. And there's a reason we don't.
It costs a lot of money in a year. And include, we're not taking their vacations, so they felt like we gave you 4 weeks vacation, but you're not taking, so you don't need it, so. And they were doing it so they could get that extra pay, and that was the reason, they said, you're given 4 weeks for a reason, and it's not for us to pay you out. So that was the reasoning behind it, and it was costing the county a lot of money.
There's always a backstory and a history to every decision made.
Yeah, that's the reason why I just wanted to limit it to 40 hours, not the full vacation time that they had available to them.
And you're talking about a maximum of 1 week. That's
Yeah.
still going to have to go to the personnel committee. So you've introduced it. Probably after we get the Wagner or when Shealy and we do the budget, that committee is going to need to probably meet.
Yeah. I just wanted to bring it up so the discussion could start and we'll see where it goes from there.
You planted a seed, which was, thank you for
Okay.
doing that.
All right. Thank you
Appreciate it.
very
Any
much.
questions? I think this side has that committee. So
Okay,
they'll deal with it with the commissioners. Thank you both.
thank you.
People are noticing that highways are showing some improvements. It's appreciated. And there's a lot of miles going to be paved and sealed. I'm looking at that map. That's appreciated. From the chamber to come up. This is a quick insert. She just has some interns and she wants to introduce them. And I know I work with some agencies that have interns and I've been impressed with the interns different organizations have in the county. So go ahead, Cindy.
Thanks. I'm Cindy Brooks with the Chamber of Commerce. And this is our Youth Ambassador Program. I remember us from coming in from last year. So we're just trying to get them all over here to learn about what goes on with your meetings, with the commissioners, the city council, county council. So today I have our intern, this is Chamber Colin O'Farrell. He was with us last year and has been at college for a year and has come back to help us out. Thank you so much.
Right into him.
Yes, yes. And this is John Luke. He's from Tri-High. He is one of our ambassadors, and I have four more that are not here. So hopefully we'll be able to make it back next month to be a part of this and get them involved and understanding. They do get a printout, tells them what you do, how you do it, and a list of all of you. So just trying to educate more than what they get in school. So that's what we do.
We appreciate the program. We appreciate you being in the program. You're the future of our county and our state and our nation. We appreciate it. I used to be assistant principal at Tri, so
Oh, yes.
I remember it fondly.
Yeah. So, and their parents are all right here in our community. So we're hoping that we keep that going and they get involved and learn what's going on and come back. So that's the goal.
Thank you and
All right.
welcome.
Thank you very much for letting
Yes,
me
we appreciate
sneak
the
in
work
here
you do.
today.
And thank you for sharing that.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you.
Another insert on your itinerary is you don't have all the handouts, I don't think. They were put in my mailbox, but if you'd listened to one of the recent commissioner meetings, the commissioners approved an owner-occupied rehab program, a grant, an ARA that we pay to be a grant advisor to us. We're the only county, all the others are cities that they work with. It's a 250,000. This would be the third round. I think one was in 2020, at the beginning of the pandemic. Another one was a year or two afterwards. We've gotten almost $500,000. And the match, as I recall, is about 11%, which would be approximately 27,500. We need to come up with that. In the past, we've used food and beverage, which I think we have over a $2 million fund balance in that right now. We verbally committed on Ready to for $2 million to hold back and see where that goes. So we have over that in our balance on food and beverage. So we do not need to approve that at this meeting, but I'd let you know. There's a request for advertising, a request for proposals on RFP. Particular newspapers, it's 3 pages because it's a federal program with monies coming through the state in Okra. There's 14 different laws that they have to check off and meet, one of them being Davis-Bacon and related acts, which has to do with paying prevailing union rates. I think the first year we did this in 2020, there were over 20 low to median income households that were affected positively with rehabbing their homes. It could be weatherization, shingles, ramps, windows, et cetera. But these do, by the law, go to low to median income families that have to fill out an application, and then they're interviewed, and ARA does all that for them, for us, through part of the monies that we pay them. So FYI, I don't have anything in front of us that asks for us to approve the source of the match of roughly 27,500, but I wanted you to be aware that might be something we address at our July 10th meeting. FYI. Any questions? It's big bang for the buck. And the fact that it's only 11% match, that's most are 20%, as Joe brought out with community crossings. This is only 11%. The last 2 have been 11%. So number 5 on my list is sick payout, Melanie Sparks. This is from Jenny Grubbs. Melanie retired 20 years of service. Her employment began April 2024. Her final payout, last payroll was May 31st. This is the first meeting we've had since then. The sick pay payout for her with the number of hours that's listed on your handout is $4,528.84. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Shannon, second by Betsy. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Jenny's not here, but we do thank Melanie for her 20 years of service to the county. Wish her all the best. Next, we have an amended salary for the clerk. I think Shannon is the liaison for the clerk's office. He might have some wisdom to share, but you do have a handout, and it's some new legal state requirements that may be attached to your handout. It is mine, but Shannon, I'm gonna give you the floor.
Sure, I believe the change for the election board members is due to having an additional meetings for the election board for this year. And then the $2,500 per diem is for Jenny. And I remembered that we reclassified her chief deputy back in February for similar reasons. The reason then was that because of the laws, we changed her chief deputy to not be eligible for overtime. And because she was classified as a chief deputy, that was a problem, and she was going to have a significant amount of overtime in an election year such as this, especially in presidential election. I've talked with Jenny, and her major concern was for her employee to be paid the overtime the way she had been in the past, and she really didn't have any concern for herself. This $2,500 is a stipend that was added. It's available as of July 1st. The next page on the handout shows you the Indiana code change. And this is for Jenny to receive that $25. She is the election supervisor's supervisor, if you will, managing person, and ultimately the one responsible for all of the work on the election. So that is why that law was passed. That is available to us, and Jenny has submitted the request to receive that $2,500 in the form of this salary ordinance.
Your last statement, you said $25, did you?
$2,500, sorry.
Okay, which is what you said initially. Okay. Questions for Shannon? So it's primary and a federal presidential election year, so that's, okay. There are no questions. So do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Susan,
I'll second.
second by Shannon. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Thank you. Ready for the Solid Waste Management District? $90,561 rounded. Mike, you're the liaison. Do you have any words of wisdom?
Really don't want to speak on it because I don't know all the stipulations with what they're asking for.
You know, Debbie?
Debbie, did you get information here?
Do they have this money in reserves and they just asking?
Oh, that's really what we want.
And we really don't see their budget, so.
Okay, their budget's in settlement fund. That's where, is that right? Was their budget in settlement on the printout you give us? Okay, it's separate. I served on that a couple of years, 5 years ago. Okay. We have a motion to approve this additional appropriation request from the management district.
So moved.
Moved by Susan,
Second.
second by Betsy. Discussion? And if not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Memorial Park, we have liaisons here, so I think this has to do with monies that were not in their budget last year that they need to pay for their general labor and utilities and land improvements.
We had, oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Susan,
We
Mike.
had heard some discussion that you guys also needed more fireworks funding. That is not on this list, so we just wanted to make sure there wasn't any confusion.
Well, we're down to $5,500.
You're getting there. I
And
saw
there's-
the signs thanking the donors, which I
Yeah.
thought was really cool, so,
They're still working on it, so
okay. All
I
right,
think the mayor's helping too.
Good for him. Yeah, it seemed like last post I saw was 17,000, so you're down to a need of a little over 5,000.
Yes,
You've got a week or less.
yes.
So you're not
So
asking us
anyone
for,
listening?
No, not yet, but I may have
we
to
don't have any
come.
meetings between now and the 4th.
I know.
It's not gonna do you any good to do it after the fact, maybe for
We'll have to
2025.
We might be able to find it in our rental funds or something. I don't know.
Keep putting a plea out. If you've gone from 17 to 5, you're heading in the right direction quickly. So usually the community comes through.
Yes.
So anything,
We appreciate everyone who's donated to that, and I'd make a motion to approve this additional appropriation for 118,000.
been moved to accept the additional appropriation from the park. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Second from Mike. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you. The park looks good. Next, we have a series of, these are required TIF reports. Annual has to do with excess assessed valuations, the first group, and tell me if we can do the TIF area with no excess assessed evaluation all at one time.
You actually really don't need to vote on these. These are just informational purposes, so
Okay,
whether or not you accept it or not really doesn't matter. They just have to send it to you.
so it's information.
It's informational.
Okay, be informed, council, the list of those like 9, there were no from the Consolidated Industrial Park through the North Fleet and Middletown. No excess assessed value reported. However, the next 6, there's a total of 21,299,000 in excess assessed valuation for those various allocation areas, Indiana Avenue, Northfield Village, Walnut Street, and Garner Street. Any questions? We'll say that we've been duly informed. And next we have, the Northwest I-70 quadrant. Is that where VRA is, I think? Do we need to do anything with this either? Just be advised that the actual amount, which I think Debbie's corrected, is $867,950 for that quadrant. Instead of the number that was originally on your itinerary. Well, note that we've been informed. Next, we have TS Tech, the annual report on TIF. Looks like they originally had estimated 493 employees. And the actual is 920. So I think we do need to vote on this, as I remember. Do I have a questions or first a motion to approve this TIF report relating to TS Tech?
So are we approving the tax abatement report, moving forward?
Yeah, that would be all you would approve. I mean, if you get one of these reports and you feel there hasn't been substantial compliance, then you can take steps to revoke the abatement, but just approving it, I think, would be
Make a motion
essentially allowing it to continue on.
to approve to allow the abatement to continue. So I would make a motion to allow the tax abatement to continue for TS Tech.
Okay, moved by Susan,
Second.
second by Shannon. Any discussion? If not, all in favor of passing the TS Tech continuing the tax abatement, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. I think there's only been one in question the 5 years I've been on, and I think teacher Councilman Malikot was the one who did that. He had reasons. Compliance with statement of benefits. That's, is that TS Tech also?
It's on the back.
Okay, Boar's Head. So we're looking at a lengthy report from, I think the company in Florida that normally they hire to file this compliance report for Boar's Head. Some of this is above my pay grade, but it's similar to what we see pretty much annually, I think. It's filed in May, but we didn't have our 1st of June meeting. Questions, comments? 2014, the actual number of employees were 454. Does anybody see the current employee number? I'm not sure I copied it off or if it's on here. And it's not necessary, but I know that they have, pretty sure they have more than 454 employees.
And I think it depends on which unit is on which tax abatement. And I don't see that,
I don't either.
but I would make a motion to accept this tax abatement and allow it to continue.
Again,
Second.
Moved by Susan, seconded by Shannon. Any discussion? For those smarter than me? Otherwise, all in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Passes 7-0. Our council budget, I will say that Susan, Shannon, and I met over in the EDC conference room last week. Debbie had asked for the budget estimates for the following year, 2025, for each department to be turned in earlier this week. We asked permission to wait until our meeting today. I'm not sure what copies you have. You have what I have. I don't know if either one of you want to explain. We ask all departments to put in their salaries a 4% increase. Sick pay, we increased by $10,000. Longevity's given what's been approved in the past. That's gone from 1,600 to 2,000 based on years of experience of the council. So that's gone up a little bit. Dues are the same, 140. We did the approved reclassification last summer was 50,000. Of course, we moved a lot of things because of the jail at snafu into that. I don't remember how many hundreds of thousands as a placeholder, but we recommended 100,000. Either one of you want to comment on why we did that for reclassification?
We just had a discussion about how it can help buffer against additional appropriations if we keep some funds there, and decided to put 100,000 and then discuss over budget session if we wanted to leave it there or keep that buffer.
So it is a buffer because we always get additional appropriations. Sometimes we have to hunt to find out where
I
we're
think
gonna.
we had always kept 20, 30, 40 in case we needed more for sick pay.
We
and-
have, and it's been a nice buffer. It's 100,000, but if we advertise this, we can always actually go down, but we just can't. If we advertise this, we can always go down if we don't need it, but that's.
Yeah, I wanted to make a comment related to that. These numbers are just the numbers that all the departments are sending to the auditor's office for us to consider at our budget meetings. Well, we put together those numbers for the council department and public safety and jail lit. That's what we did. So these are not budget numbers set in stone. They're a starting point for our budget discussion at our budget meetings later in July.
Thank
The
you.
purpose of doing this would just be if anyone besides the three of us did not want this submitted for the council budget or the jail lit budget or the safety lit budget, just to the state. Nothing's being approved, just if any of the other council members have concerns over what we suggested be sent.
This would be the time to discuss and ask. Any questions, concerns, comments? Recommendation?
And just to clarify for the council, this is something Debbie has always done, and she's always helped us out doing that. Shannon and I met with the sheriff's department, and our goal was to submit this and meet with the sheriff's department first, so we don't start the budget session with duplicates. We always have duplicates with the sheriff's vehicles, sheriff's retirement. So we sit down to budget session, $1 million, over what we expected to be. So part of the goal of doing this is just a little pre-work before the budget to not submit duplicates to the state.
Which did occur the last year especially. Any questions? If not, we don't need to take any motion on this. It's FYI. Kind of like the TIF reports. I think we're ready for Shannon. Do we need a drum roll? No.
Debbie's gonna bring up the presentation and I'll
This is the meat of the matter.
do my best to walk through it. I put a packet down for all the council members. If there are members out there that would like one of these packets, there are several copies in front of Joel. Please feel free to grab one. You want to go ahead and go to the next page. I just tried to put together a total, there's so many moving parts and so many pieces that I tried to get it straight in my head. And in doing so, I created this and thought it would be a good idea to share with you guys. So this page right here is a list of items that I went through in my spare time saying, all right, we know we'd have this amount in the 2024 budget. What do I think it's going to be next year? What do we need to look at moving forward? Well, we had $64,000 in sheriff vehicle budget. That was in public safety lit. That was anticipated that the commissioners and the sheriff were going to lease vehicles. So at budget time, this was a dollar amount that they could lease 4 vehicles. And they ultimately decided not to lease vehicles. And that's fine. They used that $64,000 to purchase 1 sheriff's vehicle this year. We know that they have been ongoing looking for more than the 4 cars that have been traditionally included. So at $60,000 a piece, the potential low for 5 cars is $300,000. And the potential high for 7 cars is $420,000. And the report that we received from the evaluation that was done on leasing showed the average was like 7.23 cars per year or something would be the right number if we wanted to do that. 420 is the high number. The next item is insurance premiums. That $643,000 is the dollar amount that we have in the current budget. We already know that we have insurance premiums going up to $874,391. So that difference is there. We are going to have to appropriate dollars at some point, either out of reclassification or additional appropriations to pay those premiums when that bill comes in. And so that's, in my mind, is the minimum. I don't think that's going to go down next year. It could go up. But at the very least, we have a minimum in there. I put $1 million as the maximum.
This is liability.
Insurance premiums. This is just for insurance premiums, and that's all of our insurance. That's in multiple budgets.
Gotcha.
And that comes directly from the documentation that was given to us by Josh Estel. The next one is inmate medical. We passed an additional appropriation not long ago that put $600,000, I think, into inmate medical. We had currently budgeted 330, and those costs are completely out of control. We are meeting soon with Angela Cox and Stacy Guffey out at the sheriff's office to try and look through what our options are for trying to reduce those costs. But I put in a minimum of 650,000 and a maximum of 880. 880 is the number that QCC gave us as what they believe the total cash layout for inmate medical would be based on the current rates and everything that they have seen in our history. The next number is market-driven wage increases. There's a $0 amount in our budget. Our wages are what they are, but we are waiting on a Wagner-Irwin-Shealy report that's going to tell us how close to market we are. We will have some serious decisions to make as to whether or not we want to pay full market wages. Do we want to pay 90%, 95%? Whatever that looks like, whatever percentage of market for these classifications that we choose to adopt, we're going to need to fund that. So I took a wild guess and said, I think it could be between $500,000 and $1 million difference in the budget for getting our employees in all departments closer to what they should be paid. The EMS needs is directly from an email document that came from Mandy Fleming that laid out the minimum that she needed to accomplish what she had in that document was $260,000. And she laid out a maximum of 300,000. Those were the parameters that she gave us to meet her goals.
She met with us 3 times. Which document are you referring to when?
Came to you in an email, and it's a Word document attached to the email. I can make sure you have it when we're done.
I know she met with us in a work station in January and then twice since. Do you know where these figures, which one of those updates she? this
It's the
referenced?
most recent one, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Build savings for insurance deductibles. We all got to hear Josh Estel talk about our insurance deductibles going from $25,000 per incident to $150,000 per incident. We certainly don't anticipate that that is going to go down in the future. The big question is, if we have lawsuits that we have to pay out up to our deductible, where does that money come from? Do we want to start putting money aside to be able to pay those deductibles? We're gonna have to have that money from somewhere. So I put in there a bare minimum of $100,000 and a maximum of $250,000 to start setting aside to pay for insurance deductibles. Insurance deductibles have never gone away. Let's put it that way. We've always had to pay something. We've been fortunate to have a lower insurance deductible for many, many years, but this higher deductible has given me a lot of concern about where those monies are going to come from. And then we just heard not very long ago, Joe Copeland reviewing his plan for bridges, and we saw the $295,000 that's needed in 2028 and $520,000 in 2029. It's got to come from somewhere. So we either have to start taking into account what Jason mentioned about moving some things around, funding that Hume Bridge a little differently based on property taxes, or we have to move it out of the general fund or somewhere. We've got to come up with money to have it there when that time comes. So I wanted to lay all those out and give myself an idea of just exactly how much dollars I'm thinking shortfall. What's it look like? You know, we had all these moving parts. What's it amount to? Well, there you see it. If we do the low that I've laid out there, we need $1.74 million. If we do the high, we need over $3 million. That's additional dollars needed just to do what we need to do. So a couple of notes there at the bottom. That does not include any loss of revenue of public safety lit funding if and when volunteer fire departments start requesting the dollar amounts that the state gave them the right to ask for. So if the public safety lit stays the same and the tax council, not the county council, authorizes the volunteer fire departments to take that top 0.05% maximum, then those dollars would be needed to be made up as well, because that would be shortfall in our public safety lit funding. So we'll talk about that here in a second, but wanted to throw these up there. This shows your inflation. We hear a lot about inflation. These are, national numbers. So we know costs are a little different all over the place, but, oh yeah, next page, I'm sorry. Thank you. I flipped it on my screen. I look at this and see, wow, 2021 and 2022 were pretty good size inflation numbers. We all know that. But the next page, if you flip that one, that shows you what the cumulative effect is. So we had 7 and 6.5, but that shows a grand total cumulative of 32.5% inflation over the last 10 years, which is big numbers, and you can see it going up there. So we're fighting that just like everybody is. That inflation number has eaten into our budgets. We have higher costs for everything, and doesn't seem to be any sign of it easing up anytime soon. So let's talk about the volunteer fire departments for a second. Next page, please, Debbie. Jason and I had some discussions yesterday, and I've had several discussions with Jason and Joel and volunteer fire departments from the state association. And I think yesterday, Jason and Paige were able to quickly identify that what's going on is the discussions I'm having with folks, we're really intermingling Part C and Part D of the Indiana Revised Code. So Part C is an existing section of the Indiana Code that all of the entities that provide fire or EMS can come to the tax council and ask for allocation of public safety lit funding. That's been there for quite some time, and I've given you the language there, and there's even a link there to the Indiana Code for Part C, and the fire and EMS is what kind of came into discussion. So if we can flip to the next page, that shows you Part D. Part D was recently added by House Enrolled Act 1454 and Senate Enrolled Act 33. And it is specific to township fire departments, volunteer fire departments, fire protection territories, or fire protection districts. And the distribution is based on the assessed value of real property, not including land that is served by each township fire department, volunteers, and so on. So this is the section that the volunteer fire departments are asking us to fund. And we'll get into that a little more here. So go ahead and flip to the next page. Many of you might have seen this sheet, and I included it because I was using basically the way that certified shares are distributed to all the entities. I used that to calculate public safety lit, and I was wrong. Public safety lit is not distributed based on the same methods that certified shares are. So if you go ahead and flip to the next page, we'll see that all those highlighted in green are not eligible. Oh, you know what? I spoke out of turn. Let's go. Go ahead and go to the next page. That's fine. I know you can't see it up there. Can you hit the up arrow twice for me, Debbie? Yeah, hit up arrow. It's hard to see there.
Green's Blountsville down.
Yeah, the green is all of those entities, I got off track, I'm sorry. All of those entities highlighted in green, which is the lower half of the page, actually do receive public safety lit distributions. They are the towns, and those get public safety lit distributions, and I'll show you more about that in a second.
So they don't qualify for what
They
you talked
do,
about.
they do not qualify to apply for funding under Part D of the law.
The volunteer fire departments.
Correct.
Okay.
So now let's go to the next page. And forget what I said about certified shares. We'll talk about that in a minute because that's a slide that looks similar and I should have been looking on my screen instead of at the wall. So if we remove all of the entities that already get public safety lit dollars, that doesn't change the bottom dollar amount. The dollar amount at risk to public safety lit is still $563,000 based on the 2024 distribution. So what that did is took the dollar amounts available to each of the townships and increased the amount that they're eligible for. So same $563,000, it's now just eligible to the 13 townships. And the circle you see on your left there is for, we have Liberty Township and we have them broken down for some reason here on East Liberty and West Liberty. We surmise it might be by school districts. We don't know. That's a question for the assessor.
That's
And
that's
we'll
my
find,
guess.
we'll find out.
It's split. The west half is Newcastle School District and the east Liberty is Hagerstown. Nettle Creek.
Shannon, if I could, oh, sorry
Please,
about that.
Please go ahead, Joel.
If I could interject for a second, Jason, you can certainly weigh in as well too. The way I read each of these statutes are the applications are actually made by fire departments and the distributions are directly to the volunteer fire departments, not to the townships. So for instance, I mean, certainly I think, I don't have any doubt that the numbers are correct, but for instance, if the township that serves, let's say Greensboro Township did not apply, then that volunteer fire department would not receive any revenue is the way I read the statute.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for pointing.
I just
that
wanted to
out.
make sure that if this is considered, it's not going to be automatically that all these townships,
Right.
all the volunteer fire departments that serve these townships would receive revenue.
Right, they have to apply and they have to come and ask. And we have it later on our agenda. We have 4 that have come to ask.
As for 2025.
For 2025, yes, and they have a deadline. They needed to do it by the end of this month, I guess. And they have asked. The dollar amounts are here as an example. And we know the dollar amounts are going to be based on whatever comes in for 2025. And the right-hand portion of this spreadsheet shows you what a 0.01, a 0.02, a 0.03, a 0.04, or a 0.05. Those are just to give those fire departments an idea of what the dollar amounts could look like based on 2024 revenues.
I'm going to surmise that they're going to ask for the 0.05.
I will be shocked if they do not. The 4 that we have are asking for the 0.05.
And we do not have to approve that amount. We have to
Correct.
approve it in some increment of 0.01.
Yeah, and when we say we, we're talking about the tax council, not the county council. So-
Correct.
So.
Which we are about 45% of.
Correct. So I do want to point out that we have one nuance here, and Jason, if you want to come up, there's a microphone down there for you, down on that table. Henry Township has no volunteer fire department. They contract everything out to the city of Newcastle, and the city of Newcastle Fire Department under Part D is not eligible to apply for Henry Township's funding. So Jason and I discussed that Henry Township, the city fire department could ask for Henry Township's dollars similar to the way the calculation is, but they would have to ask for that under Part C, not Part D. So if did I hit that close? Do you want to talk about that at all?
I think it's correct.
Okay, that's just kind of a way to say that that funding for that township is not necessarily lost. It's still at risk, and it could be, if the tax council approves it, it could be available for protecting Henry Township.
Do you think the state can make this any more convoluted? Don't encourage them.
If you give them enough time.
Okay, go ahead and jump to the next page for me. Yeah, and then we'll jump one more page to local income taxes. This is just a brief overview of our certified shares. It shows you what it looks like over the last 5 years. I wanted to give you that so you could see it. It also shows you what the supplemental is, and well, you want to talk about complex, calculating that supplemental is a mess. They recalculate that every year based on how much they have and how much they're anticipating and all kinds of stuff. But that gives you an idea of how much our certified shares have grown. Those are based on income. Those are based on the income of our residents. So that's what we have seen. Certified shares are 1%. If we could go to the next page. This is actually the report from the DLGF that shows you what the distribution was for certified shares for 2024. And I put in that red box over top of the townships because you can see they did not receive any public safety lit funding. That's why the townships are available. So you can see certified shares are distributed to those townships. And if you go to the next page, you can see that public safety lit funds are distributed to these towns. You can see Shirley, Bluntsville, Caddis, they do get a chunk of public safety lit already. So that is why they are not eligible to apply for the Part D of the volunteer fire department stuff. So next page. And that's just continuation. We can go to the next page.
School districts also don't get a piece.
Correct. So,
Libraries do.
so this is a big spreadsheet, but not as big as the next one. I circled here the top left up there. You can see that $563,000 that's kind of at risk to be lost to volunteer fire department funding. It's at risk to the county and the rest of the distributees, I guess. Not to say that those fire departments don't deserve it, but we have to look at our budgets as that's a lost revenue resource.
So that's based on all of them applying and being
If-
approved the .05.
Correct. If every one of the 16 volunteer fire departments, if all the counties are funded at .05, then $563,000 is at risk to the public safety lit revenue. So this gives you an idea of what if we lost 0.05% and we increased it 0.05%, we would be break even. And then I gave you exactly what a 0.08, a 0.10, a 0.13, that yellow highlighted line is increments of increase to public safety lit. Our ad hoc lit committee met with the city of Newcastle, and I will tell you they are in favor of increasing public safety lit, and they are in favor of increasing it bigger than the number that we have on the far right here. They would like to see it increased a bunch, which is not a surprise. Their budgets are in very rough shape comparatively to ours. So we did have some discussions about where we could end up with on public safety lit. These numbers are here for you to review. We'll talk about public safety lit more later, but this gives you an idea of if we were to propose to pass a public safety lit increase of 0.20, that would bring in a little over $1.1 million of additional revenue to the county budget in the form of a public safety lit and that can only be used for public safety. I've showed here the same impact for the city of Newcastle. This is a spreadsheet we used when we discussed it with them. This shows you the impact of those same increases to all of the taxing units that would receive those dollars. So I said earlier that Shirley and Bluntsville and Caddis. So if we were to pass a public safety lit increase, the amount that they receive would increase as well. That's what this is showing you. The next page shows what it would be if all of that $563,000 were to be distributed to the townships. So it would be different based on that. So next page is correctional and jail lit. This, I guess, correctional, jail, EMS, and judicial, using the same 2024 estimated residential income, shows you what the jail lit itself brings in. We're a 0.20, and if we leave it at 0.20, we can use 100% of the proceeds for operational expenses. So you can see that that's 531,000 based on what you see there. If we were to increase it to 0.22, we actually reduce the amount that's available to us to spend on operating expenses.
Why is that?
That's based on the way the law is written. It was, and I quoted the code there. I'd have to go back and look, but it has to do with the percentage change of what you're allowed to spend based on it's directly related to the tax rate. Do you have any more information about that, Jason?
When you jump from our current of 0.2 jail lit to 0.22, the amount available for daily operations goes down about 36,000. Why?
It has to do with that House Enrolled Act 1121 from 2024.
Because
And-
if you go over 0.2, you can only use
You can-
0.3.
You can only go up
For
to 0.3,
operational
but you can only use the percentage related. So you can only use 22%, where you can use 100% of it if you're at 0.2.
I guess we have to look at the law to make sense of that.
It's quoted there, and so is the link there at the bottom of the page.
Well, I definitely wouldn't want to go up 0.02,
Right.
0.22. 'cause
Yeah, it makes no sense at all. In my
have-
opinion, it makes no sense at all for us to increase the jail lit.
I would concur with that statement.
EMS lit is something that is available to us as the county council. We do not have to seek approval from the tax council. All three of these do not require tax council. EMS lit, we saw in the shortfall potential that our EMS could see a $260,000 to $300,000 need in the foreseeable future. We also know that we're paying $300,000 out of public safety lit right now to the city of Newcastle for ALS services. So I started an EMS lit estimate at 0.03 because that gives us just enough to pay that $300,000 with a little bit left over.
So 38,000 would go to Henry County
Yes,
EMS annually.
yes. And then a 0.04 gives you 450,000, which would pay the 300,000, gives you 150 to Henry County EMS, and you can see the progression there. I took that all the way up to 0.08. You can see how much dollars that brings in, but we have the ability to pass an EMS lit without any other authorities. We do have to have public hearings and things like that. So we'll talk about that here after we're done. Judicial lit is 0.01 up to 0.05 is, I believe, the maximum that we can do. However, there is limitations on what you can spend this money on, and $177,511 you can see listed underneath of there is the maximum that we can spend the proceeds from the judicial lit on. It has to do with the court reporter, the court bailiff, and their administrators. We can only have a lit that pays up to 50% of their their wages. So
So 0.01 is the maximum applicable to us.
yes, if we passed a 0.02, we would be collecting too much and we would not be allowed to do that. And of course, the links and things are there at the bottom. Can we go to the next page? This is some additional information for you on median income. And I know, Kenan, you handed out a page, so I'll defer to you in just a second. This is up through 2022. This is as recent of information as we have from the census. So I wanted you to see the median income per person is basically 30.9K in 2022. So $31,000. 57.6 thousand is the median household income in 2022. I wish I had better numbers directly from the census to show you what that looks like for 2024. I suspect they're a little higher, but I don't suspect they're that much higher.
They've been going up incrementally about what you've shown.
I would think it would go up similar, yes. Hold on a second. My computer wants to upgrade or something. Next page, please. There are the actual numbers, the median individual income. And then I showed the income tax paid annually on an individual's salary, making that $30,861. So annually, it'd be $555. Every 2 weeks, they'll see $21.37 out of their paycheck. Median household income for the whole household, $57,632, with total local income tax paid of $1,037 and a biweekly withholding of $39.90.
So that's money coming to Henry County coffers. What I do like about this, I don't like anything about taxes. What I do like about this, it's based on the ability to pay and what a person's income is. So the person making 30,000 is going to be paying half of what a person making 60,000. And
Yep.
that's the way it should be.
Yep.
A person that's making more and can afford it more pays more.
Yep, this is basically our tax rate on what the median income was in 2022. If we can jump to the next page. This is a breakdown, so you can see the total. On the left there is our total amount. That's the $2 amounts with the monthly and the biweekly withholdings. So biweekly, the $21.37 and the $39.90. And then the different colors, I went ahead and split those out based on what those portions of the lit are for. So the property tax relief applied to property tax bills of 0.25, $2.97 biweekly for the average individual making just over $30,000. The certified shares is $11.87. And it's important to note that that is applied to all the taxing authorities. That is divided based on those spreadsheets that I showed you before. The public safety lit is 0.25, so the same $2.97 comes out for public safety. PSAP is $1.19. $1.19 every 2 weeks goes for our 911 services, and $2.37 every 2 weeks goes to our jail. And you can see what those are based on the median household income as well. So having put all that together, I showed there at the bottom what things would look like if we increased the lit rate, any lit rate. So if we increase the total lit rate by 0.01, the average individual will see 12 more cents gone out of their biweekly pay. If we increase it by 0.1, the average individual at $30,861 would see another $1.19 withheld from their biweekly paycheck. And then that continues through the bottom rows. You can see I did 0.01 all the way up to 0.24. So at the 0.24 total lit increase, an individual making, 30,861 would have to pay another $2.85. So the next two pages basically show you what those numbers look like from a $20,000 wage all the way up to a $70,000 wage. I figured individuals can look at that and say, my family total makes $60,000 a year, and so their biweekly withholding for each of those tax rates would be in that specific column.
Is there a reason you don't have the $11,000 wage, which is what the council makes?
Good question. Just take the 22.5 and divide it.
Divide it by two.
Divide it in half. Yeah.
Yeah, that's quick.
That was a lot of information, and I am happy to answer questions. Joel and Jason have been very helpful in helping to put this together, and they're both here to answer questions as well.
I just want to,
Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you to Shannon for going above and beyond on this. That's really, really impressive. And I know this was a lot of work, so thank you.
That's exactly what I was going to say. Since you did this, why are we paying Baker Tilly so much?
I will
That
say
was
it
tongue
could
in
not
cheek.
have been done without Jason, so, or Joel, so they get all the
Well,
credit.
you did say a lot of input from Joel and Jason, so I'll rescind that statement or question. It's a lot of work. It does make a lot of sense. I will comment, I know Shannon has a lot more to present, but he mentioned, I gave this to you and I just took this off of, one is on the census, which he alluded to some of this, and one is off National Institute of Health. There's a slight difference between median family income and median household income. The front, which is what he alluded to, is actually median family income, which is 66,739. And I think that was close to the 2022 census figure that he used on one of the graphs. Bottom line, out of 92 counties, there's only 19 counties with a lower median family income than Henry. There's 72 counties that make more median family income than what Henry does. On the back, which I printed off very lightly, so I actually wrote in some things that you could see. Indiana education, there's nearly 30% of the population have a bachelor's or more degrees. Henry County, 17% have a bachelor's or higher degree, which you know that education likely is tied somewhat closely to income. We know that from other statistics the Fed's put out. Median household income, which is different than the median family income. State average is 66,785. Henry County is 57,632. We're number 70 out of 92 counties. Only 12 counties make less as far as our median household income in the state of Indiana. So an employment state, 61.5% employment. Henry County, 51.4%. I stated at the last meeting, when we make these decisions, do not consider the taxpayer and our citizens in Henry County. We are below average in a lot of categories. So let that be part of your mind when you're making decisions about taxation.
I think that what Shannon has done is to quantify the decision that we're getting ready to make, which is really helpful. I can't remember Kyle's joke he made last year after budget session when we absorbed the EMS expense, we absorbed secure beds, and he said something about what will we have to absorb next year? But he said it in a very funny way. Does anyone remember what his words were? Kyle, can you? Okay, so it was very funny and I remembered it for a long time, but what it is, this now is a large insurance increase. So we've absorbed some pretty large expenses the last few years during an inflationary period. And so I think that in my mind, there is a need to increase our tax receipts. And what Shannon has done for all of us is to help us decide exactly what the right level is. If we don't raise them enough, we'll bleed into our reserves, which we worked really hard to build, because when many of us took office, we had 0 reserves and we're borrowing money from other departments just to pay bills. So in 5 years, we've brought the county into a pretty healthy financial situation, which we'd like to continue. And so if we want to not eat up those reserves, there needs to be a consideration for how to absorb these extra expenses. And also how we can pay our employees a fair wage, which is something that we haven't made a priority as much as we needed to. And as Shannon has said, we've been chasing a moving target. We set out to try to fix wages without raising taxes, but unfortunately we started doing that when wages were inflating quickly. So even though we have done raises much more than previous councils have, and we've been really happy to be able to do that, we are not any closer to market value, average market for most jobs than we were before. It's just an unfortunate part of our economy right now. And so there's a lot to consider. And I think that this information helps all of us think about it on our own and decide how to balance the constituents who are trying to pay their bills with the need to do business correctly and do correctly by our employees who need to be paid a fair wage too. So I really appreciate what Shannon's put together here.
I do too. My only question is the amount and the degree. I think the state and what they do in their $6 billion surplus, they say, have you maxed out your lit rate of 2.5%? No, well, do that, then come and talk to us. And that's what we get constantly from our elected officials at the state level, which is unfortunate. Our only means to be competitive is to raise taxes. I know we have to, my qualm is with the amount. Right now, we're 1.8% total lits. So the state allows us 2.5%. With the report that Jason shared with us back in early December, we are smack dab in the middle with that bar chart he showed. There's the same number of counties below us and above us. What this would do with what's being considered here over the next month is to move us well above the state average, where our constituents are well below the state average. So keep that in mind.
I think it's good that we don't all agree because it provides really good conversation.
I agree. And I'm going to
And-
come out and I'm going to be a supporter of the taxpayer.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And always just another reminder that the answer for this tax situation is more people in the county. So what we need to
I've
all
heard Chad say
strive
that several
as
times. More people.
community leaders is to bring more people into the county to bear the burden of the services that the state requires us to provide. Otherwise, the people who are still here have to bear the burden of the services as they increase in price, which
That's
is,
exactly right. And that's why I think the Ready 2.0, I mean, the projects that we're going to be investing in, those are going to bring in people and, economic development.
Well,
So,
3 out of the 5 are housing.
yeah,
And
absolutely.
I think we shared, we're number 8 in all counties in the country as far as difficulty and availability of housing. People can't move here
Right.
because there's a shortage of places to move to, especially in their price range, their budget.
Right. I'm glad to see, in the 5 years I've been on this council, I'm glad where the council's at and the county's at, where we're looking towards the future. It's been a big change in momentum, and I'm really encouraged by that.
so when you see new people move to the county, you can thank them for picking up their share of the cost for running the services that have to be. Right.
Well, until then, we have a population that is going to be burdened by increased taxes. Until we get more bodies. It's a conundrum, chicken and egg, because we cannot improve the quality of life or keep people here because we're not competitive in what we pay them. I know there's going to be turnover. We've talked about this for 5 years because we're not competitive in what we pay our employees. But I guess I have always said I'm a fiscal conservative. Taxing's not my first go-to as far as solving our problems.
I'll add that it's not my go-to either. I came into office last year thinking that we had plenty of places to trim the fat. We got to be more efficient. Let's work harder to do these things. And my hat goes off to the council before me because all the hard work in that area was done. I'm not saying all the fat's gone. Is there more that could be trimmed? Possibly. I also do not want to micromanage all of the department heads. They are challenged to do a job and they tell us what they need to do the job. I feel like if we're telling them what if they say they need 4 people and I say they need 3, who's right? I don't feel that I know enough about all those departments to know exactly how many people they need to do their job. Many of our department heads are elected officials and they are chosen to do a job. Some are appointed to do a job. They know best what they need. I've looked around. I can't find other places to cut that aren't, some would be very, very painful. We've made some very, very painful cuts. And I think most of those very, very painful cuts that the previous council made were cutting deep into our employees' pockets. And that helped. That helped tremendously to get the budget where it is today. But with all the inflationary costs, our costs have all gone up. We haven't increased wages for our employees, and we cut deeply into their pockets with the benefits. So we need to look at taxes. That I don't like it. I do not want to raise taxes, but I also want to emphasize to anybody out there that's listening that this is not property taxes. This has nothing to do with the assessed value of your home. It does not have anything to do with the property tax bills that come twice a year. This is income taxes. And many of our residents are on fixed incomes and get Social Security and that's it. Well, Social Security doesn't pay these income taxes. It's the working folks that will pay these income taxes. So we're not hitting the folks that are living on Social Security alone by changing these taxes. It's important to note the difference, in my opinion.
Whatever is going to be proposed and motion made here will require a hearing, which will be in July. Whatever is proposed. And eventually on the public service, the tax council is going to be involved, not just us, the EMS and judicial is just us. It's going to be minuscule compared with property taxes. I agree, property taxes is the #1 bite in a person's budget, but this is going to affect take-home pay, but a small portion of what property taxes do. I agree with that statement. I agree we're going to have to do this. The only disagreement is how much.
Right. And I think everybody's working in good faith here, which is great. I appreciate our teamwork and I encourage members of the public to share their opinions on this. I'm happy to hear from anybody.
And Shannon's presentation is very good for transparency. So this is what we're looking at right now. Every year we sit down for budget 4, 5, 6 days and look for every penny to try to raise wages to what they should be. And when we do the math this year, we know when we sit down again, there's not going to be pennies to raise wages near what they should be. So yeah, we welcome any input from our constituents and everyone now has an opportunity to see exactly what data we're using to make the decisions we're trying to make.
And our July 10th, I think it is, and our July, 25th? I believe. I don't have the calendar in front. Those are 2 opportunities for the public to come forth and give input.
We have a
Um,
meeting on July 10th, our normal
a
council
normal
meeting,
Wednesday meeting,
and then our normal work session is July 25th.
and that'll have to be an actual meeting.
Well, we haven't made any motions yet, but
Right. We're just,
that's one of my questions for Joel is there time between now and July 10th for us to hold a public hearing on July 10th for the lits that we have control of?
EMS and judicial.
No, there would not be. Well, let me look at the count. No, because you'd have to publish in Middletown and in the Courier Times, and Middletown publishes on Thursdays, and it may not publish. The soonest it could publish would be the 4th, and it may not even publish on the 4th, but that would be less than the 10 days.
Okay, so we need to
10th,
hold
so-
our hearing all at the same time to get him
It-
done in July.
Correct.
Yeah, for the rest of the council's information, if we do not do this and get this started, then we have pushed a lot of this off another year.
Correct, yeah, and one of the wrinkles the legislature put in was, they indicated a provision that essentially if you change the distribution or if you change a lit rate, you have to have the vote completed and notice made to, overlapping taxing districts by August 1. And so, that's a change that added some complication to it because it used to be just if you pass it within a certain time frame, it affected the effective date of when the tax would take place. But now that August 1 date sort of makes it hard to enter. For me, it's hard to read it as anything other than August 1, just because all of these taxes arguably have an impact on, or all of these potential changes arguably have an impact on another taxing district.
What if we we moved our June meeting and canceled it to the 20? Could we do that? a
Oh,
week-
sure,
A week
yeah.
later, like
Our
instead
July
of the
meeting.
10th, the 17th?
Yeah, you could do that. I mean, if you want to take
I'd like to
specific,
do them separately because it's going to be a heck of a meeting. on the
yeah, if you
25th.
want to take specific actions on these, we have to publish a notice that contains the text of the ordinance. So I would need to know specific rates that you're looking at with each of these proposed changes.
We're getting there, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be pretty specific any way you go with it.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Okay. Yeah, so they're out next. So the 11th would be the first date for Middletown. So then in theory, then the 21st would be the first possible date you could have a public hearing.
So maybe we should do it on the 25th, given.
I
that
think we should do it on the 25th and hold our meeting first. Do it separate.
Any comments on the south end? Basically, the bottom line is keep it the way it is. The meetings that we'd already set, and I'm looking at my calendar, it is July 10th is our normal July meeting date. The 25th would have been a work session, which has to now be a meeting with a public hearing. We all on board with that? Still 2 meetings like we've had. 10th is a meeting. The work session on the 25th would actually be another meeting, which would be a hearing.
So we're meeting on both the 10th and the 25th.
That's the
Okay.
last I heard as a recommendation.
Okay.
Anybody on the south end disagree? It's the same 2 meetings. It's just the work session is going to have to be an actual meeting, hearing. It's going to be an actual meeting. Like today, our work session is an actual meeting. These are probably the last 2 we have to do this, maybe.
Normal time, 4:30.
I wouldn't know why we would change it. We complicated
Makes
it enough.
sense.
I wouldn't know.
Before we jump into motions or anything, I'm gonna jump to the next item on our agenda, which is actually volunteer fire departments and safety lit requests. We have received official requests from 4, and then you have 2 emails. I got Newcastle's. Okay, so we have received requests from Moreland Blue River. We have received requests from Sulphur Springs, Jefferson Township. We have received requests from Greensboro. And we have received requests from Strawn, Dudley Township. As we were sitting here, I received an email from Newcastle Fire Department requesting the Henry Township funding to be done under Part C as opposed to Part D. And then if so Liberty, they have to get these requests in by the end of the month, and all these requests need to go to the tax council. So before we jump into making motions about anything, I wanted you guys to know that there are a number of requests for this funding to come out of our existing tax base right now for 2025.
And they're all 0.05.
They're all 0.05. Yeah, the Henry Township number is 127,000. The Blue River number is just under 16,000. The Jefferson number is 33,000. The Liberty numbers combined is 27,000. And the Greensboro number is just under 19,000. That's a big chunk of dollars coming right off the top of our public safety lit if the tax council votes to award those dollars to them
At 0.05.
at 0.05.
Shannon, can you remind me that, I know you asked that question about Henry Township. Tell me that specific circumstance. Do they have a fire department?
They do not have a fire department. They have a contract with the city of Newcastle to provide fire services for the entire township.
I think I'm misunderstood. 'Cause I think Part C, it says a fire department, volunteer fire department, or EMS. And Henry Township doesn't have any of those.
But I think the city of Newcastle Fire Department, since it serves Henry Township, could make a request. Now, as I read Part C, that allows for allocation of a specific dollar amount, correct?
But it also says that is operated by or serves a political subdivision that is not otherwise entitled to receive a distribution of tax revenue.
I
So
think
would
it's operated by one that receives it, but it does also serve a.
Okay.
So that's how I would read it, that since it would be or. That I think a regular volunteer fire department or emergency medical service could make that request.
It's a bit unorthodox, but I think the
Yeah.
request can be made, and whether the tax council chooses to approve it is up to the full tax council, but it's certainly an opportunity that, and we received that email as we were here tonight, so.
And if I remember right from the PSAP, it's kind of like based on 100. So we're like 45 out of 100. Newcastle's like 35 out of 100, and the rest of the county's like 20 out of 100 as far as the tax council.
Roughly,
rounding.
yes, yeah.
But it is based on 100.
It is based on population on 100, and I think last year when we did the PSAP, when we were considering going with one that would require the income tax council action, I figured up the percentages, and it was around those numbers.
You still have the floor.
Well, that brings us to the possibilities of making motions. And in my opinion, we would be best served by taking advantage of the opportunity to pass a judicial lit to pay for those wages that are mandated to us by the state. And the most we could pass would be, or the most we could use would be a 0.01 judicial lit. So I move that the county council hold hearings to adopt a 0.01% judicial lit moving forward.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second that and just add that would bring in receipts of 126,000 a year, just for informational reasons.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Further discussion? I will add that what that does, that 120,000 frees up from the general fund, a 1% raise for all employees. Just that one move alone is a 1% raise for all employees. So any other discussion? If not, all in favor of a motion of a 1% to put forth in an upcoming hearing for vote?
0.01,
Pardon?
0.01.
Yeah, what he said. 0.01. Yeah, that would be much more than a 1% raise. That'd be a lot. Yeah, 0.01. Thank you. My brain's slowing down. All in favor, if there's no other discussion, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. It passes 7-0.
The next item is the EMS lit. And I have gone back and forth on this one. We have a $300,000 obligation. And I feel like we do have an obligation to provide some funding moving forward to our Henry County EMS. What that looks like in the future is not 100% clear to me, but I think providing funding for them to be able to make some progress is necessary. With that, I believe that I would like to make a motion to hold a hearing for a 0.04% EMS lit to be held at our public hearing in July.
So as I look at the spreadsheet here, the minimum would be 0.03 and the max would be 0.08.
The minimum's actually 0.01, and we can go all the way up to, I think, 0.2. It has to go in those are just the numbers. I started at 0.03 because of the 300,000, and I didn't feel comfortable going any higher than 0.08. So I gave you that. If somebody wants to go higher than that, we can talk about it, but 0.04 is where my motion is.
It's been moved. Is there a second? Then we can have further discussion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, 0.04%. EMS lit, to be brought forth at a hearing in July. Now, discussion.
And Kenan, before you go into this, and I hate to throw a wrinkle on that, when I look at the statute, it talks about that the revenue generated by the EMS lit is to be put in a separate dedicated fund, and it indicates the revenue should be maintained a separate dedicated fund and used by the county only for paying for operating costs incurred by the county for emergency medical services that are provided throughout the county. My concern with that would be that someone at the State Board of Accounts would take exception to $300,000 of that money being paid to another entity under the theory that, well, the county is not directly incurring these expenses for operating costs.
I think where it comes up is also by law, we are required to provide ALS service, which
Sure.
we basically, I hope by now we have a memorandum of understanding that
There
we
is.
contract out with Newcastle to provide the state required ALS where we currently as a county highway EMS cannot accommodate or meet.
I mean, there's probably a way we could, I think structure it to meet that requirement. I don't know, Jason, have you had any experience with that? Okay. Correct. Okay. So if you're comfortable with that, then I'm fine with that. Okay. Okay. Then if that's the case, then I think it's defensible either way. So-
Okay. But we want to be able to defend
Yeah.
it with the state and the State Board of Accounts. My question on this, and you probably know it, the 300,000 loan, again, I'd reference back to the 0.01% judicial. This 300,000 would provide in and of itself, out of the general fund savings, a 3% increase. So even at 0.03% and 0.01%, the 4% that we asked to put in these proposed department head increase for raises for next year, these two alone would be provided up and freed up in the general fund to do that. Now, it doesn't incorporate all these other expected expenses you put on your spreadsheet, which we've got to deal with as well. But as far as salaries, it is the amount of money to take care of the 4% raise that we asked the department to plug in for their estimates for 2025. I feel comfortable with the 0.03, which would put another 38,000, pardon me, annually. Looking at the budget summary, apparently the collections are starting to come in just between June 12th and June 25th. The amount of expenses has dropped 35,000, so I assume that's collections have come in. And so from Mandy's report to us in January with the new collection software, that is heading very rapidly into self-sustaining. So I'm just letting you know I would feel comfortable with the 0.03 because I know what's coming forth on the public safety lit, which is where I'm concerned with the taxpayer when you add all three of these together, which we've not talked about public safety yet.
Mandy, are those assumptions correct? The revenue being generated? And if it, from the software and everything? I'm curious.
If we have a lot of other questions for Mandy, we're going to have to ask her to come to the microphone because people at home won't be able to hear. Do you have other questions for Mandy?
Yeah, I'm curious your opinion on revenue generated by a new tax and what that does from the standpoint of if it's shifted somewhere else to pay for another, to the, back to the general fund, what's that do to the outlook down the road funding wise for EMS?
Well, I mean, obviously more is better. So if you look like, for example, the budget that we submitted just to fund the medic, it jumped our budget over up to 1.1 million. But if you take the 260,000 off, which you asked me if that would move the dial, it drops it right back down to the budget that was approved for this year. That's the difference it makes. Now, eventually, would it be? I don't know how long it'll take to pull in revenues. I would love if the 30-day insurance and all of that they're trying to pass at the House level, federal level, that you get a return within 30 days. You're still at their will.
So there's still unknowns.
Right. So I don't know how long it would take to become self-sustained as ALS. I just know to get there, we're going to need a bump. We're going to need help.
If we were
That's
to
just all.
pass and approve a 0.03 EMS lit, it would generate basically $338,000. We're committed to $300,000 for Newcastle to provide ALS service. It would provide another $38,000 above what you have now annually. And I know the expenses are going up. I know that the collections are improving. I said, I know that your deficit basically is 35,000 less now. We've shaved off, your balances improved 35,000 just between June 12th and yesterday. So it's heading in the right direction. I know there's a lot of unknowns and you don't know the future and you don't know what collections are going to be. You don't know what the House and Senate's going to pass. What he proposed would bring in another 150,000.
Well, I do think too, if that's not something you're willing to do, is to help us get up to that level, then we are seriously going to look at having to balance bill. And then that is the people that you serve in the county. All of those bills go back to them, some of those up to $2,000 and $3,000 a person.
Right.
Because that's what we write off right now.
Well, my feeling is very much opposed to what Brian shared. I don't know why we're one of the few counties that don't bill the people that use the EMS.
Because we're poor. I mean,
Well,
he just put it on a spreadsheet. I mean, we
I
were gonna
know.
pass that on. You got someone that's on fixed income, Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, and then they get a $2,000 bill.
Yeah, I know we're poor. That's why I'm trying to
I mean,
reduce the
that's
increase in taxes.
somewhere it's got to break even. Somewhere I mean, it's
Well, everybody's
it's
gonna,
desperate everywhere, but I mean, I don't know the answer. That's why I don't sit over
I
there.
agree with your statement. We're poor. That's why I said what I did. We're one of the poorest counties in the state and we're increasing taxes
Yeah.
quite a bit to everyone.
We also have, with ambulance runs, we also have a lot of frequent flyers that could maybe be more responsible, at least in my experience as a dispatcher in Middletown. There were a lot of frequent flyers that didn't get billed that cost us a lot of money.
And I would say that balance billing and how those things are operated is outside of the purview of this council.
I agree.
We cannot make that decision. I had this discussion with commissioners. If they want to do balance billing and you propose it to them, they can make that decision. We're faced with the budget and the shortfalls and what is needed to be done to fill those gaps. And that's one of the reasons why I made the motion for 0.04%.
Any
I
other-
think for the sake of transparency, if the commissioners did decide to balance bill, I would be in favor of a lower tax rate. And I think that that's fair for our taxpayers to know that we are looking at a higher tax rate because we don't balance bill, which is a type of social program. And because we don't get to make the choice about whether or not we balance bill as a council, we have to make sure bills are covered. But that is the implication, is the taxpayers share the cost then of individuals who have to use the EMS services. And I think that's fair to say out loud.
Unfortunately, I'm one that's used different EMS services. I've been carried in ambulances in multiple counties. This is the only county where I've not been billed.
Right.
We
Well,
are the
and two, though,
exception.
you also can't lump us with the city and the difference between us balance billing and them balance billing. Those, when you said frequent flyers, for example, which I wouldn't term them that, but I mean, we transport people that otherwise won't get where they're going if we don't this isn't a 911 call. This isn't something where,
Right.
oh, I've got a stomach ache and I don't have a ride, I'm calling 911. He has to respond to those. There is no, one, the fee's greater because we may be taking you 50 or 60 miles away, staying on scene with you 3 or 4 hours and then returning you. So it's not like these people are, just
Understood.
choose, there is no other way for them to get there because they can't
Understood.
walk or they've had a stroke or they're on O2 or they have to be medically monitored. So it's it's not exactly the same when we say balance billing to share, because if I thought I had to pay $5 more bi-weekly to be guaranteed that my mom and my grandma got transport to their doctor's appointment, I would be okay with that. So I want to keep that in perspective too.
They'll be paying more
So-
with this tax increase.
Just saying.
Any other discussion? Any other questions from Andy?
Just wanted to clarify, Ken, and when you said that would free up money in the general fund with the imposition of whatever rate it is.
Well, right now it's out of what lit?
It's in public safety lit right now, but it was moved out of general fund, or I guess it was in ARP before that.
What?
So, yeah, it's in public safety lit now. So we have the ability to budget numerous things out of general fund into the public safety lit if this comes out of public safety lit and goes to EMS lit. So it's all about striking that balance in my opinion.
It frees up 300,000 that we can move.
I know, but the point that I'm getting at is that in clarification is that we're not going to move it away from EMS because they
No.
still have things, because otherwise it would just be robbing Peter to pay Paul.
Right now, we don't pay anything.
So right
for
now, we don't
EMS.
fund our Henry County EMS
Right.
at all. We just fund a $300,000 contract with the city. So if we did pass a 0.04 lit, we would still fund the $300,000 from the city that we're currently taking from safety lit. And then there would be some small amount of dollars to use for our Henry County EMS.
Well, 150,000 annually.
Right. I just wanted the clarification on that.
Other discussion? Been moved and seconded. Are we ready to?
Thank you, Mandy.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
good.
You've given us a lot of information over the last 6 months to mull over. Any others? If not, there's been a motion for a 0.04% to move forward on a hearing on EMS lit. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I oppose. It's 6-1. I would want to take 0.03 as a clarification. You're still on.
Yep, so the last item is public safety lit. And I mentioned that we discussed this with the City of Newcastle Lit Committee. And I will tell you that the members of our Lit Committee and the members of their Lit Committee all had different ideas. It wasn't like the majority of us came together and said, this is where we think it should be. It didn't work that way. But knowing that the tax council has the final say on where this lands, I feel comfortable making a motion that we send this request to the tax council for a proposed public safety lit increase up to 0.20%. If we put that in there, it cannot go higher, but it can go lower. So we can have discussion at the tax council on where that will land. And we can decide exactly amongst the tax council where that number should be. So that's my motion, up to 0.2% in public safety lit request.
What's the minimum number? Yeah,
We can increase it by 0.01.
okay.
That's the bare, we can increase it in increments of 0.01.
His spreadsheet has a minimum of 0.05.
Yeah, I put the 0.05 as a minimum because that was the amount that was at risk to for the volunteer fire departments. So,
So 0.05 would only cover the volunteer fire departments if all of them requested a 0.05 and all of them were approved at 0.05. Again, it's a tax council. We have 45% of the vote. Newcastle has 35% of the vote. The rest of the county has 20% of the vote, roughly. That's a fairly close estimate. If that were approved with what we just suggested on 0.04 for EMS and 0.01 for judicial, that would take our 1.8 up to 2.05. The state average currently is 1.89. This would go way above the average in the state of Indiana, so you know where I'm going to vote.
Sometimes you have to consider being way below average in other areas to make up the difference. It's just the fact of the situation we're in.
I think the situation we're in, looking at the budget summary, is near as dire as it's been painted.
so for retrospect, the average wage at $30,861, if that whole thing is passed, would go up $2.97 every 2 weeks. Additional would come out of the average person's paycheck.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded to go up to a 0.2 increase in public safety lit to bring before the tax council next month.
Just for clarification, we're still negotiating that number, right? It's potentially,
Up to,
okay.
up to.
For information, Newcastle, which is 35%, was okay with 0.17.
They came in asking for 0.3.
And
They ended up okay with 0.17.
That was 2 members of the council, city council. I agree. They did.
Yeah.
And by initiating the tax council with a maximum of 0.2, in this upcoming year, we would not be able to initiate the tax council again. So this provides the county council with an opportunity to come in with a maximum level.
Any other discussion? It's going to be an interesting meeting in July. Any other discussion? I don't want to cut it off. If not, it's been moved and seconded to bring before the tax council in July, I think July 25th, up to a 0.2% increase in public safety lit. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Passes 6-1. Passes 5-2. You covered the volunteer fire departments. Are there anything else we need to discuss? There's a law the Department of Labor put out that requires a certain amount. I have that here in a note in my 60 pages of notes. And I think Shannon, in a text we talked about, we do have some employees where that's going to affect
Yes, I'm looking at it.
This July, but next July is a big jump.
July 1st, it's actually January when the big jump is.
Okay, well, that's gonna be a
The,
budget
it-
consideration.
It has to do with overtime. And effective July 1st of this year, any exempt employee below $43,888 will basically be eligible for overtime. There is an exemption related to elected officials and chief deputies, which that is on my agenda to discuss with Addie. Just because you can be exempt doesn't mean that you should be, in my opinion. So that dollar amount, it goes into effect July 1 of this year. January 1 of next year, that amount goes to $55,068. So any employee making less than $55,068 who is salary will be eligible for overtime starting January 1st.
That's gonna have a major impact on our budget.
It will, and it will have an impact on the Wagner-Irwin-Shealy study. And I've discussed that briefly with Stephanie, and I've got an upcoming meeting to discuss it with Addie.
Do you think there's time for them to incorporate that ruling into their,
Addie says that there is,
that's gonna be important.
it is, and I also asked for Addie to let me know where in the ruling it says that elected officials and chief deputies are exempt, and we'll have some decisions to make regarding that.
I
We'll
think
have-
yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm gonna say, we'll have employees making more money plus overtime than elected officials and chief deputies, which makes no sense to me, so.
I was just gonna say, I think we should expect to see wages come in higher because this drives up wages and we're gonna see that on this wage study.
Yep. Which is gonna drive up inflation,
Which is one of the reasons why I put those dollar amounts, 500,000 to $1 million in market wage adjustment changes that I think we may have to make.
understood. Doesn't make me happy, but I do understand it. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. So you'll report back on July 10th, you're meeting with Addie before then?
I believe it's the 9th. I'm gonna double check.
I think we need to review our budget hearing dates. Debbie, did you wanna?
I thought we only scheduled 4.
We took the Fridays off.
Yeah, I think at your request. Sixth and 7th instead of the 8th. Council, please look at
I'm
your
good.
calendar, 6th and 7th of August, instead of 7th and 8th. Sixth and 7th. Right now, we were scheduled for the 7th and 8th, Wednesday, Thursday. Debbie's suggesting Tuesday, Wednesday.
I could do the 5th and the 7th, but I will be in Bloomington on the 6th.
What about the 5th and 7th?
Okay, Shannon can't be here on the 6th. Look at the 5th and 7th, 5th and 7th, Monday and Wednesday. We have conflicts with people that really need to be here, and we're wondering if we can move the 7th and 8th to the 5th and 7th. That Monday, 5th and 7th, is that okay with everybody? Budget hearings. Budget hearings. No, this is just the 1 week that we're changing. We meet the prior week too. 5th and 7th, and we'd like 8:30 to 4:30 or anyway.
Our July dates, I believe, are the 31st and 1st of August.
It is.
Are we just gonna schedule 4 for now?
I think the last few years it's 4, and on 2 of the last 4 years, we've had to add a Monday after that.
Hopefully
It's a
we
cleanup.
can, go through the WISP report beforehand this time rather than do wages on the back end,
I
which
hope we
always
get it at-
causes problems. Yeah.
Right.
At least a week prior to the
Yeah.
31st is what I'm hoping.
My meeting is actually June 28th with Addie.
That's tomorrow. You're meeting tomorrow.
So I'm meeting tomorrow with Addie.
Okay.
Told you I
Okay.
wasn't through today yet.
Okay, to summarize, July 31st and August 1st, correct? 31st, Wednesday, the 31st, Thursday, the 1st. That's the first week of budget hearings. And August 1st, that's a Wednesday, Thursday. And now we're looking at the second week being the 5th and 7th, correct?
Correct.
8:30 to 4:30. And we're usually out by 4 at the latest.
Did you have a lunch? You had lunch
We
conflicts?
we always had at least an hour off for lunch. We never, or 12 to 1.
You guys, you must have, but you guys should probably have a budget email to the.
If you didn't hear, Debbie said we should have our budgets by Monday. That would be wonderful.
Okay, good, but I'll have an email to you those days, but we get those days, stuff like that. You'll just have no problem.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you so much. That's a lot of work.
So we got those dates nailed down. I know there's a lot of work to do about how to address the salaries based on the study. Is there kind of an idea or a general thought about how to go about that, that we can kind of start focusing on or get our minds wrapped around right now?
I think we have to have the report. I'm really hoping we have the report by the 24th, that we have a week, but could you ask that tomorrow?
I'll
specifically?
ask, yeah.
We need a week because this report's going to be huge and have huge implications.
So Kyle, when I think about it, I think we get the report, we study the report, we decide, are we accepting this as our benchmark or not? And then what percentage of average market is our target? And then what does that cost the county? That's just Susan's thought process.
So
That makes sense.
does any of the data that was submitted for the budgets for this year or for this coming year, as far as salaries and wages, really did play any impact? Is it useful at all at this point?
Tell me what you mean by data.
What was submitted from a standpoint of this percent raise or that percent raise? I
Oh,
can't-
submitted by the department heads?
Yes.
Yeah, they're everywhere.
I think
Okay.
the sheriff, yeah. I think the sheriff's department tried to use what they thought the report will show. And then we had asked everyone to use 4% as a target. Those are the only examples I've heard.
So I hope some of them are 4% as suggested. We can hope. Anything else, council?
Is there a way that we can go? So we probably won't have to do the backing out and adding back in and all of that, correct?
I think we do, and I was gonna ask Debbie and Bobby if they could back out before we start budget. Well, I
So,
meant
before you-
before we start session, if you could. So we could just subtract the total to, yeah.
I was what I was gonna ask is, can we get just the labor total? And then we can work around it in the budget rather than having you guys put it in and take it out.
What'd
three
you see
times.
for part-time? Did people change their part-time rates?
I know we've addressed part-time too the last 4 years, made inroads. I think when we made those recommendations, that's what they were. We recommended a minimum. And most went with that minimum, but a few opted not to because it was a recommendation.
Another moving part is something Shannon's been working on, which is the correct amount of health insurance premium expense to be charged to each department. Do you have any update?
Not yet. I know Stephanie's working on, basically, all the retirees are not categorized in their previous departments. They were just moved altogether as retirees. So to get an idea of how many employees in each department and how many retirees in each department that could be or should be paid out of that department's budget, we need to recategorize them. So Josh Estel was working with Stephanie and Steele. I know I hope to have that information for budget is the answer. And basically what Josh Estel told me is if Stephanie can get all that data categorized, then Steele can just make us a report that we can have on a regular basis for our budget. She was willing to give it a shot, and it was going to be painful for her. So I appreciate her doing that, and I appreciate her being allowed that opportunity, Debbie.
Shannon and I met with Josh. I will categorize it as a very educational meeting.
Agreed.
We have made inroads in that too, because I know 3 years ago when we were looking at the deviation from one department to another that has their own tax rate, there was no justification for the difference. And we've whittled it and got closer and closer. I think with the information that we're going to get, we're going to be very close to where it should be legitimately and fairly among those 4 departments.
So for the rest of the council, we have a form that is given to us by Josh Estel that says if an employee is no longer an employee, here are the COBRA rates that they have to pay based on all of our insurance. And it is broken down based on employee only, employee with child, employee with spouse, or family. So we know what the total costs are for each plan based on those COBRA rates, because that's what we would charge an employee that's leaving to continue their coverage. We also know how much each employee contributes out of their pay for their portion of their medical insurance. So if we subtract that from the COBRA rate, we know how much each employee is costing that department. We should be able to get a report out of this Steele system that shows us here are the number of employees in Plan A and Plan B. Here is the number in employee only. Here's the number employee child. Here's the number employee spouse. Here's the number family. Then it just becomes a math problem, and we know exactly how much to put in every department's budget based on the COBRA rates that are brought to us by the actuaries and how much our employees are paying to contribute. The rest is just getting those things in the right categories and having the report. So we should be really good to budget, I hope.
That was the information we've been lacking to get really zero into equity among those 4 departments. For extra credit, what does COBRA stand for?
I haven't a clue.
The Consolidated Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. And trust me, I cheated. Gotten that, I would have been falling off my chair. So anything else? So your council is working to make it fair and equitable and make us more competitive. These lit rates are going to make us more competitive because we'll have some money. So I appreciate the work again, Shannon, Susan. We've met numerous times for different purposes, but a lot of it has to do with lid and insurance and things affecting the budget. Anything else? If not, we'll open up to the public. Okay, sit down, Chad. Can we consolidate the EMS and the judicial into one date or one time period? Because that only requires council. The other is a separate entity. Or an intermission on the 25th.
Well, notice has to set a time of the hearing, so the probably won't have time to serve hearings.
Well, 4:30 on the 25th for the first two.
Yeah, and then
We'll have other business. We could say 5:30.
we can, or we can say 5 o'clock and they can wait.
Yeah, we could do that. And
It's up
then
to
our
you.
other business will be after
We're gonna
that.
hear Chad now, so he won't take more than 15 minutes.
And I guess the other question would be, do you envision the hearing on the lid increase also involving you guys, the city council possibly,
Yes.
same day time?
Yes, and I've checked that time with them and told them that it was an open possibility. So you might check with them as well.
Sure. Yeah.
If they're agreeable, great. If not, we'll find a different date.
Okay. All right, that works.
Yeah, that's when it's not just us deciding, like P said.
Before Chad from the public comes down, I want to reiterate my gratitude to Shannon and Susan and Kenan. You're included in this because you've been going to a lot of meetings too. Just you guys have been doing a lot of heavy lifting on behalf of our council, and I know you're doing really good work, and I just want you to know I appreciate you.
Well, thank you. We appreciate the work the whole council does, but thank you for those comments. Shannon put a yeoman's amount of work into that spreadsheet.
Shannon put a lot of work in to get it straight in my head. I just shared it with you all.
Sit down, Chad. Go ahead.
So, community corrections, they don't fund with any rate. So by the community corrections board, they have civic and common middle. I don't have any place to put it. So do I need to have to go create a fund to put that in?
If he's the one that creates
Maybe
it.
I have to do classification. We got to figure out how to get that put into budget for this year, but
What do we have left in reclassification? Is this for this year or next?
no, it's for next year. It's the raises for next year.
So there's nothing to pay for this year?
No.
Oh,
it's for
okay.
next year. Like, the state know how we're gonna get it. You wanna go
This for the increase, the raise, you say?
to the raise.
Well, we proposed 100,000, so they'll take care of it.
Well, this,
You want a
This
separate
is a
fund?
place to put their budget amount. They're just looking for an item. We could create a line in our budget for it, or we could create a whole nother fund, right?
That's our question. Do you wanna create it as a fund? Do you wanna take it out of your, we just need to know.
Tell me again why it can't be in theirs, so I understand.
Community corrections doesn't have a money in the grant.
Okay, so it's all grant funded and okay, thank you.
do you have a preference over whether or not we put it in our budget or a separate fund?
Our budget's gonna increase 100,000. People are gonna ask why
We can, as long as it's,
If it's not, it's only, it would probably be easier if it's, you know, maybe to put it in yours instead of creating a whole fund.
okay.
It's just, but that's, it's your call, but
Yeah.
creating a whole fund for just like 5 salaries.
I think
I-
for next year, we should just
Overkill.
do that and then see
yeah,
if
I
there's
would
any
be in
issue.
favor, I'm sorry, we got feedback. I'd be in favor of just a line item in our budget that says community corrections overages above grant dollars or something like that, if that works for, I'm open. You
Anybody
guys think-
else okay with that? I don't think we need a motion, do we? Joel, do we need a motion to add a fund line and an account line in our fund? Okay. Anything else before we let Chad come up and speak? You have 3 minutes, sir. As advertised in the itinerary.
Okay, so I will try not to channel my inner Corey Murphy then, so.
Sir, can you speak
Get
into the
right to it.
mic?
Can you not hear me? Is this better? Okay, so my first question is to Joel. So these rates that they have approved so far, can those be altered in the hearing? Or are they set at this point? On the lit rates that have been voted on here to propose, they can be altered in the hearing, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so.
You can go
So,
down,
for
but you can't go
example,
up.
Yeah, you can go down, can't go up. Okay, so I got it. So a couple things. One, obviously you guys know I'm not a tax person. So I've said first of all, I'm really glad I'm not sitting up there with you. Secondly, I get that it's only $5.50, but you know what? For a single mom of two that's making 33 grand, that's where they take their kids to McDonald's that month. So it's impactful. It's impactful because you're right. It's not $5 would not even let's say you quadrupled that and gave somebody the $130,000 salary and they're only paying $20 of payroll. You're right. It's not as impactful to them, but it's very impactful to that 33,000. We got a whole lot more of the 33,000s than we do the 120,000s. So that's my concern. Secondly, this county has more money in its general fund unappropriated reserves than it probably ever has. If I'm not mistaken, it's nearly $7 million. Is that round? I mean, I think it's
I
pushing.
think that's a projection, but
Okay, I think that's the projected number. When I took office, we had zero. They literally borrowed money to make December payroll.
negative numbers.
So the drastic difference in 6 years is massive. So passing a 14% tax increase when we have those kind of reserves, I think in my opinion, I get you guys, and Shannon, you've done a phenomenal job, and I appreciate this. This is insanely good. But this is something to seriously consider. 3 taxes at one time, matching the largest tax increase, if I'm not mistaken, that this county has ever passed is what you're proposing right now. That's a lot, guys. I think we need to step back and seriously look at these. And we're doing all of this before we look at the budget, before we really understand, as Kenan said, and I appreciated, we don't know that we don't know that we're in that dire straits. And so that's my concern. I just feel that, I'm just voicing my opinion as Chad the citizen, because that's all I am today. That's my concern. This is a huge tax increase on one of the poorest counties in the state of Indiana, taking us effectively to more than the top, almost the top quarter of all tax rates in the state. And you're right, Betsy, I preached for years, we need belly buttons. We've got plenty of jobs, we need belly buttons to fill them, but we need houses to put those belly buttons in. When you have one of the highest tax rates in the state, why would they want to move here when they can move to Delaware County and have a tax rate that's, 20% less and have houses? Why can't they just live in Delaware County and then work in Henry County? We've got to pay attention to that, because that does matter. Because you're right, it's only $5 a payroll, but that $5 adds up and it's impactful to people. I mean, it really is.
Chad, everything you said is, all your points are well taken. I guess we have a lot to think about in the next month, how we want to approach this most responsibly. These are really tough calls. And again, it's not that we love taxes, we're all Republicans. It's the state of Indiana forcing us to make really hard decisions. So.
And I don't disagree that there's probably something that needs to be done. I just think this number is a lot bigger than what I would feel comfortable with sitting in your seats. And I do want to make a quick comment if I'm not on my time yet, but.
You're out of time, but go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Well, she asked me questions. Can I get an extension? So I have said this for a while, and I appreciate what Mandy and all of them have done a phenomenal job. But we've got to look at that. I think the balance billing thing has to happen. The hospital does it. Everybody does it. It's a scenario where you put an indigent care plan in place. If the folks really can't afford it, I'm telling you, if Brian comes, picks me up at the house when I fall off the back deck, I know I'm going to have to pay my deductible, and I expect Brian to bill me for my deductible but you know what? He wouldn't.
Only county I know.
But, and the difference with Mandy's, and Mandy has the ability, it's not an emergent situation, so they can choose, and they understand that they know that they're choosing to take a service. And if there's other medical transport services that can be utilized there too. So people understand that they have to pay for that service. So, that's my 2 cents on that.
Let the minutes show that Ken and Gray agrees with Chad Malaco.
Chad,
Hey, can I get that in writing, please?
Put it in the minutes.
Now, that is noteworthy.
one more question. Why did you fall off the back deck?
That's for another story. I didn't actually, I haven't, but no. But no, I mean, so, yeah.
I completely appreciate your comments and I agree with everything you just said. Kind of goes back to what is in our purview to do. So we can't make those changes. If we could, we probably would, but that's somebody else's decision. We have to deal.
I totally get that, but you also have the ability as a council person to say, I'm not going to fund this. Commissioners, you have to make a decision. Because you have just as much power as any commissioner up there, because they can't influence your vote no more than you can theirs. So you're letting them strong arm you by them not making a decision. Hey, did you get that on the record? Because I'm happy to say that too, because that's the honest truth. Am I wrong, Debbie? You've been in politics you've been sitting in this seat for a long time.
Yeah.
You're allowing their non-action to force you to have to take action.
I agree. That's what Indiana code states. Any other public? Mr. Fisher, come on up to the microphone. You have 3 minutes. Which Chad abused.
It doesn't matter to me. I just got my fall tax bill and it's higher, okay? Taxes is taxes. I've made a good living, but I'm not gonna keep donating to this county. You know, there's a point where I'm not gonna pay the money you guys ask, okay?
Understood.
I go per well along with it, you know, but I'm not giving all my money that I've worked 48 years for to get to you guys.
Understood.
You're gonna have to understand that. I'm not doing it.
I'm sure.
Now, if it takes me selling that and moving someplace else and paying more money, I'll do it. But, you know, there's only so much tax that we can afford to pay. I mean, I make a good living, worked 45 years, I've made a good living, but I'm not gonna give it to you guys. I'm just not gonna do it. I'll pay my taxes and I grit every time I see them. I just got my tax bill, it's higher than it was last year. That's just facts of life.
Especially property.
It's gotta
taxes.
be a point to the end of it sometime. I guess I'm gonna die to get out of it, I guess. But I just, you know, I make a good living, always have. I'll pay it till I can't and then I won't. There's a lot of people don't even pay it now. So we need to go after some of them guys.
Appreciate your comments. And I'm sure you're not the only citizen that feels similar. Anyone else? Anything else, council? If not, make sure you wait and sign the reports and the forms that we have a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
Adjourned.